Thanks for logging on, everybody. We'll get started here in about 4 minutes. But this is streaming live on YouTube right now, so it is being streamed publicly. And yeah, we'll get going here shortly. Thanks.
Hey, Dylan, can you hear me okay? It's John.
Yeah, hey, can hear you loud and clear, John.
Good to see everyone. I'll get my video going here in a second.
Sounds good.
Hey, Cameron. Hey, Paul.
Hey, guys.
How's it going, John?
All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Dylan Tabish with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I'm just going to give a quick little tech roundup and then hand it off to, I believe, Alan and Kevin. But if anybody has any questions about Zoom, looks like everybody's kind of got their names updated. If you wouldn't mind, a few folks updating your full name so everybody knows who you are. And this meeting is streaming live on our YouTube page, the FWP YouTube page, and also on our Fish, Wildlife, and Parks website. So there's a link there for members of the public to join on their computer or to call in for comments or just to follow the meeting. If anybody has any questions, let me know related to Zoom. I'm happy to work through any of those kinks. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it off to you, Alan.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up, nodding heads.
Loud
Good.
and clear.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for taking the time tonight. This is a little bit different format, but it was important to get together and talk about how the year went. To get started, just so everybody knows who's on the phone, could we go around and do introductions, and I'll just call on you in the squares that I see here. I'll start first. My name's Alan Wood. I work for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, managing the wildlife mitigation program, at least for a few more days. My last day is Friday. I'm retiring, so be around a little bit longer. And Paul, you're the first square on the Hollywood squares.
Alrighty. Thanks, Alan. Congratulations on your retirement. It's been a pleasure working with you over the years. I'm Paul McKenzie. I'm the Lands and Resource Manager for Stoltz Land and Lumber here in Columbia Falls, one of the landowner reps tonight.
Thanks, Paul. Craig?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Craig Workman. I'm the Public Works Director in Whitefish. No retirements in my near future.
And Cameron?
Hi, everybody. Hope you can hear me all right. Congrats, Alan, on your retirement. I'm a forester with Stoltz Land and Lumber, and I kind of manage the daily on-the-ground operations of the Haskill Basin Conservation Easement area for Stoltz.
Thanks, Cameron. Angela?
Hi, good evening. And again, congratulations, Alan. I'm Angela Jacobs. I'm the Whitefish City Attorney.
Thanks. John?
Hi, everyone. John Mulfeld, Mayor, City of Whitefish. I'm the city's liaison representative. And congrats, Alan. You should hold your head high exiting FWP. You've had a stellar career, and thanks for everything.
Thanks, John. Dana?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dana Smith. I'm the city manager for Whitefish. And congrats on your retirement.
Thank you. Maria?
Good evening, everyone. I am Maria Bessam, the Director for Parks and Recreation for the City of Whitefish, and enjoy your retirement.
I'm Margosia? Did I say that right? Almost.
Yep, I'm Margosia Dudkowski. I'm the Program Director for Whitefish Legacy Park and Whitefish Trail.
And Kevin? League? Kevin, you're on mute. Unmute and try again.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kevin League. I work for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks as the Conservation Easement Stewardship Manager, a statewide position that manages the stewardship on our 550,000 acres. Alan, you have been a big part of that huge number, and I want to congratulate you. Job well done, and you will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Kevin. Vaughn, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Vaughn is not here. He's here virtually, I guess you could say.
Okay, he's virtual. Okay.
Yeah.
Chris?
Hi, I'm Kris Tempel with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I'm a habitat conservation biologist. I've been working with Alan Wood for years now. And unfortunately, my work computer does not have a camera, so you guys don't have to look at me tonight, or maybe that's fortunately.
And the other Kevin?
Not sure who that one is, Alan. That might be a relic from maybe Kevin League's when he logged in, but you can ignore that one.
Okay, how about Dave Grady? Dylan, could those be members of the public that don't have access without you unmuting them?
Well, this one was created as a regular Zoom and not a webinar, so I don't actually have the ability to mute and unmute them. Everybody kind of has their own ability to. So I guess, Dave, it looks like you are unmuted. If you'd like to introduce yourself, go ahead and speak up. Well, I'm not seeing him, so I'm going to mute him again. If you don't recognize that name, yeah, he might be a member of the public who clicked in. But Dave, if you're listening, you can unmute yourself when we get to the public comment period. And go.
Dave is a member of the public. He lives up Reservoir Road opposite of the 800 road for access.
Okay. Great. Thanks, John. Yeah, Dave, if you're there and you want to introduce yourself, looks like you unmuted yourself, so go ahead. Well, it might not be working for you, Dave, but I'm going to mute you again, and hopefully, if you have any input, you'll be able to get your microphone to work.
Dylan, can he also text you or in some way message to get messages through if he has a question or comment?
Yeah, Dave, if you do have a question or comment and you're not able to get your computer to work, you can text me on my cell phone, 406-381-2292, 406-381-2292.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. So with that, I want to jump right in, I guess, with the agenda for tonight. We'll start off with the Haskill Basin Conservation Easement. And the first item is the review of last year's notes. And Chris Hammond sent those out to everybody, I think. I hope you got them. In looking through them, there was only one item that was left from last year for a to-do item from last year's meeting, and that was working with the Glacier Nordic Club to manage parking. Maybe Paul or Cameron, you got any follow-up on that?
Yeah, we worked with Glacier Nordic. They got a permit through the county. I got it in my presentation, Alan, and we put additional signage so there'd be no parking on the road there, and went really well. No complaints from neighbors this year.
Good, thank you. And we can get into it more in depth if you want with your update. With that, John, are there any updates from City of Whitefish?
We do have some updates from Public Works as well as Parks and Rec. And I believe Angie and Dana are also here in case any questions arise from an administrative standpoint. But because Craig and Maria know the details of what transpired in the easement boundary more than I do, I invited them tonight to present on behalf of the city's activities. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over, and we can start with either Craig or Maria. Start with Public Works.
Yeah, I think I am the first one on the list, and Maria has put that up. All right, let me just get rid of my other screen. There you go. Yeah, so in terms of water system updates, as per usual, we do get up to the watershed on a weekly basis, at least during the summer months, for inspection and adjustment of the two intakes we have right now on Second and Third Creeks. Typically, we're taking our side-by-side up there as it gets snowier. We have tracks on the side-by-side that we use, and sometimes we will snowshoe up. Things are looking good at the intakes. We did meet with Mild Fence last year to look at the opportunity to do some fencing around the two active intakes. We do have pricing for that, and that's something that I'm looking at moving forward with in the next budget cycle for the city of Whitefish. One important note that I forgot to bring up last year, it actually happened in 2019, but the city did pay off our hydro plant loan with Flathead Electric. Right now, that hydro plant is producing hydroelectric power from the hydraulic head from the water that we get from Second and Third Creeks. And we produce about $60,000 a year in annual energy offsets. That pays for all of the energy that it takes to run the water plant. And then the rest of it is distributed throughout other city facilities, I think mostly at the wastewater plant. But that's an exciting update that I forgot to mention last year. So tracking back a year there. We did continue to do some sampling on First Creek just to look at the viability of bringing that water source back online. We have seen low levels of E. coli in that creek, but I think the highest level that we've had is about 30 colony forming units per 100 milliliters, and that's well below the recreational standard. I don't have a baseline of E. coli for Second and Third Creek, so I'm not sure really how valid that information is, but it does tell us that I think there is some viability for bringing First Creek back online in the future. And then I'll also just mention, and this may be coming up in other folks' updates, but Northwestern Energy has been doing some gas main, transmission main work up in the watershed, and we met with them on a couple of occasions to look at that project. In terms of the pictures there, you see the bottom picture is just a drone photo that one of our employees took when we first started the water plant project. I think it was in late August or early September. And what you're looking at there is the city's million gallon concrete reservoir, and then the raw water pond. And then top left, I believe that's Second Creek, and then top right is what the contact absorption clarifiers look like in the water plant. Can you jump on to the next slide there, Maria? There we go. So I just wanted to give everyone a quick update on the water plant improvement project, what we've termed our water source and treatment capacity project. We did finish design on this project in June of this year, and the project will be increasing our capacity at the water plant by 50%. So we'll be adding 2 new filters up at the plant, but we're also increasing space at the plant for 2 additional filters. So right now we're at 4 million gallons per day of treatment capacity, and when this project's done, we'll be at 6 million gallons, but we'll have the room to put 2 more filters and go up to 8 million gallons per day. So the project is well underway, and I'm happy to report that the largest inconvenience to the public, which was our deep sanitary sewer and reservoir road, has been completed. There were some pretty significant delays in Reservoir Road this fall as a result of that project, and just the narrow corridor and the depth of that pipe. In order to keep the workers safe in the trench, we had to hold traffic for as much as 30 minutes at a time. And so I realized it was a pretty big inconvenience, but that project is now over. We do still need to put a water main up Reservoir Road, but that'll be a shallower utility, and I don't anticipate delays of more than 5-10 minutes at the most next spring. And that project will go a lot quicker. It doesn't have to go all the way down to Edgewood, or East Lakeshore. So let's see, the new contact absorption clarifiers and the precast wall sections are expected towards the end of this month. We were hoping to have the wall panels before Thanksgiving, but as with everything COVID, precast concrete has been delayed considerably as well. So anyway, project's moving along. We did have to do quite a bit of excavation at the water plant. So that top picture that you guys are looking at there shows the restored slope where we used soil nails to actually to stabilize that slope. So each one of those little squares that you see goes back into that slope about 25 feet, where we actually drilled and then concreted those stabilizers in place. So it was a pretty cool project. We're about $1.1 million into this $9 million project. So we do anticipate to have the project completed and online next summer. That's about it as far as water plant stuff goes. So I'll turn it over to, I think Margosha is next on the presentation.
Actually, next we have Angie.
So as you guys will recall, as part of negotiating the conservation easement, Stoltz had some pretty grave concerns about liability that could be associated with the Whitefish Trail running through the conservation easement. The solution we came up with was for Stoltz to actually transfer the trail easement in fee to the city within 4 years. So a few years ago, we began the initial steps of going out there and seeing what it would take to survey the trail corridor, and realized that it would be prohibitively expensive. It required tons of pins, and it would probably take 2 summers to accomplish. That didn't seem like a viable solution really to any of those involved. So we met on several occasions, tried to find a different solution, and eventually approached the county about obtaining a right-of-way exemption for the trail corridor, which would mean that we wouldn't have to comply with the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act. The county was surprisingly very accommodating and did sign off on that. The final step was drafting of the right-of-way deed. We did get that accomplished. It was recorded this year. So the city is now a proud owner of a strip of land, a trail outside of city limits. The deed itself is pretty short. The conservation easement required the deed to do several things. It required it to reserve to Stoltz the right to cross the city's property, the right to maintain, improve, repair, and relocate roads, the right to temporarily restrict public access in the event that timber management activities may cause a hazard. Unless we agree with Stoltz, those are usually limited to 5 days. We can allow them to close it for longer, but we need 30 days notice before they do that. It also gave Stoltz the right to temporarily restrict public access in the case of an emergency, including extreme fire danger for a reasonable period of time. And finally, it provides, as again required by the conservation easement, that if we were not to use the property as a public trail anymore, that it would automatically revert to grantor. So it has been recorded. We have an extremely long description of what the property actually is. But again, we didn't have to have it surveyed, which saved Whitefish Legacy Partners, the city, tons of time and tons of money. And that's about all I have.
So on the Whitefish Trail in Haskill, we had a very busy year this year. We saw a 45% increase of trail visits, and that is recorded on the trail just above the reservoir trailhead. So significantly busier. That mirrors an increase in usage that we saw across the whole of the Whitefish Trail system. And to give you an idea what that actually looks like, on average, we had 46 more visits to the trail per day throughout the whole year. So we saw lots of use, similar kind of proportions of folks using the trail, going in and out, or shuttling the trail and just using it in one direction as we saw last year. So it seems like that use is pretty similar to what we've seen, just more people and dogs. And we also had a busy year on the trail in Haskill with maintenance projects. Our Whitefish Trail coordinator, who's our part-time seasonal trail employee logged 221 hours working on the trail in Haskill. We did some significant brushing, which is kind of expected in these couple years after the trail's constructed to improve lines of sight. And we also saw we had a pretty wet spring and early summer, and we saw some kind of new challenges with drainage on the trail that we hadn't seen since it was built. Some groundwater seeps developing in the tread itself. And so we did some significant work to repair that, both to protect the tread and to make sure that we're not having erosion as that water runs off.
And in the Winter Sports Incorporated portion of our easement area, we have been working with Glacier Nordic Club on plans for their new groomer storage building. They currently have a temporary groomer storage building, and part of the plan was to put a more permanent structure on the property. We have been working with the city's building department and with Winter Sports Incorporated, and have had it reviewed and approved by both the building department and WSI. If you can see my cursor, this is the parking lot area, and the building is located here. And it will look somewhat like this in structure, though the color of it would be green and brown. This is the most recent rendering that we have received to date. And that's all we have from the city.
Okay, thank you. Lots going on. Busy and unique year this year. Next up, Kevin, you want to go over the monitoring report for this year?
You bet. So spent the better part of a day visiting the property on July 1st of this year. And Paul McKenzie and I toured around the property by vehicle and foot. Not a whole lot to report. Pretty normal management, no real issues of significance to report. We did field a notice for a day use for an area to change to day use only because of tremendous camping pressure, and I'm sure Paul will talk a little bit about that and the many challenges they faced with regards to the massive increase in public use. We looked at some timber harvest areas. We looked at some management areas, some timber management areas. We looked at some road maintenance areas, some weed spraying areas, and just really didn't note anything of real significance. Everything looked quite good, and that's really all I have to report.
Good, thanks, Kevin. Stoltz.
All right, Alan, I'm going to be giving the presentation today, so bear with me a second. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So Haskill Basin Conservation Easement Area was established February 1st, 2016. Here we have a map. The blue line represents our boundary. Essentially, it's 3,020 acres. And then there's an inholding of private property, the white property of around 120 up there in section 8. And we got section 21 as an outlier down below, also in the CE area. So in 2020, we had approximately 814 acres of harvest, but it was mostly scattered blowdown from the March 13th windstorm of 2020. Anyone who recreates up there probably noticed the significant impact that had on our timber stands. So in an effort to clean that up and salvage that timber, I had crews up there basically from May through September doing salvage work only. And then we also had 91 acres of what we call commercial thin with regen. It's basically removing whitewoods, grand fir, alpine fir, spruce, and putting the best tree, which could be a western larch Doug fir, western red cedar, western white pine, keeping our good trees growing and thinning them out on a tighter spacing, but removing diseased trees if there's fir engraver in our grand fir, for example, or the alpine firs in decline, or mistletoe in trees. We take those out and make an opening to get new trees growing. And then, of course, we had 23 acres of shelter wood harvest. And I sent out some maps to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in the city regarding these timber sale projects. So if you're interested, there's some more info on those sheets. The Whitefish Municipal Stewardship Project, which is adjacent to Stoltz. It's a Forest Service project. We completed harvesting on that. The winter of 2020, we had some skyline work to finish up. March of 2020, we basically finished that. And yeah, so that's what's going on there for timber harvest. We do have one active sale still that's going to be finishing up this week. In regards to roads, we had no new road construction, some minor maintenance, surface blading just to maintain the road surface, some culvert maintenance, and brushing on some of our higher roads. We had 20 acres of right-of-way spot spraying herbicide work, which is equivalent of 8.25 miles. And there was no excavation in 2020. Sorry, I got a sensitive scroller. Other management activities included boundary line maintenance. With the Whitefish Municipal Watershed Project, the U.S. Forest Service actually surveyed and established lines on the edge of our property for that timber sale, which was very nice. As the city mentioned, the natural gas line loop was installed in Haskill Basin, connected from Iron Horse to the Lookout Ridge property and tied into Whitefish Mountain Resorts, the line that goes up there. We have a little bit of slash grinding to do for hog fuel that'll go to our cogeneration plant associated with the Whitefish Municipal Watershed Project. But otherwise, all the slashing and post-harvest work and excavator piling up there is complete. And the Forest Service burned the hand piles and other slash piles associated with logging. They have not, however, broadcast burned the face up there due to weather changes. So here's just a timber sale map of the stewardship sale. Unit 12 in the northwest corner was right against our boundary of the Haskill Basin Conservation Easement area, as was 3, 1, and 2. Those are all directly adjacent. And this timber sale, as many of you are familiar with it, was meant to protect our private lands and the watershed itself in the event of wildfire. Recreation-wise, the Whitefish Trail is in full swing. The boardwalk and viewing platform were completed. We didn't have too many wildlife conflicts up there this year, which was great. We did close the trail for 5 days associated with a timber sale, and Margosia worked with me on that, so that was real nice. Glacier Nordic, we just signed license agreements for 2020 through 2021 for grooming with Iron Horse and Glacier Nordic. So regarding their access point off the Haskill Basin Road, they got a conditional use permit through the county, and they followed all their covenants and guidelines there that permit, and with our additional signage, it was a real success this year. Not a whole lot going on up there for commercial use and organized recreation this year. The laser tag still went on, and we're contemplating renewing that license for next year. We are considering going under a biannual rule adoption with FWP to improve enforcement. We've had a lot of issues with poaching and kind of, I wouldn't call it trespass, but people being where they're not supposed to be, with conflicts with management operations in our block management areas and the CE areas as well, being behind gates when they're closed for logging, and it's just safety concerns mainly. So here we have our open lands policy. On the left is a sheet of paper we hand out at our office. It's also available on our website. And then this sign is basically the same thing, and it's posted at some of our access points where we've had some issues in the past. Luckily, our signs are still in good condition. They haven't been shot up, and we haven't had more issues from those sites, so I think they're working. All our lands are registered and certified with the American Tree Farm System. We've been a tree farm since 1965, I believe. So quite a while, and we get audited every year. And we have 60 tree farms. None of the tree farm parcels we have were audited, or none were in the Haskill Basin CE this year, but it's basically a standard surveillance audit, and there's no compliance issues, so that went well. BMP audits that are held by the Montana DNRC are usually every other year, and this year was supposed to be one, and but due to COVID, they were put off, and it looks like they're going to be rescheduled for just 2022. We're certified through the Sustainable Forestry Initiative for fiber sourcing, that we source our fiber sustainably. Anyways, we had a surveillance audit for that as well, and they visited Haskill 9 CTR, which is our current sale that's ongoing up there, and that all looked good. No non-conformance or opportunities for improvement, and they recommended us for continued certification, so that was great. And then any questions?
Cameron, I might just add a few things. Really appreciate the coordination with Mayor Ghost and the trail. We apologize for messing up on our notification there. It was just kind of we didn't give you guys as much notice as we should have, and we appreciate you working with that. It was just a combination of things. Cameron was injured and had not been in the field, and didn't recognize the location of that trail. Was going to be impacted by our timber harvest there. So we'll certainly do better in the future on that, and really do appreciate your cooperation on that. I also wanted to thank you guys for your communication efforts and communicating things like wildlife conflicts. You're just really good at that. As everyone knows, the amount of recreational use we saw across the entire valley was much greater this year than we'd seen anywhere in the past, and did create a few conflicts specifically with that. I think folks call it the 800 road access point. We had some folks that were camping there. I know the mayor contacted me and passed along some concerns of the neighbors there, and we did some research in there and identified, yes, people were actually staying there, which is kind of surprising. And we did go to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and asked for the opportunity to designate that spot specifically as a day use only, and restrict camping on that site to try to prevent those kind of impacts there. Obviously, there were some sanitation concerns and what have you, with people actually essentially living there. And we ran into that in a lot of locations this year. I'm not sure how we're going to manage that going ahead. Maybe it's a one-year thing. I don't know. there was certainly some extra pressure with a lot of the public camping opportunities weren't available, and that pushed a lot of pressure out into the rest of the landowners around the valley. So, I think we did have an incidence of some poaching in that same area this fall. It just indicative of a lot more use, and maybe folks that have different land use ethics or attitudes towards land. So we're going to continue to need help from all of our partners on this to continue to message and help folks to treat lands with respect and minimize impacts there. So, and I also just wanted to pass along just a little information. Probably most of you know that Chuck Rohde, our general manager, who's normally at these meetings, Chuck's going to be retiring at the end of the year. And he just wanted to pass along thanks to all the folks that worked with us on this conservation easement. He really appreciated working with all of you. It was a tremendous accomplishment to get us to where we are today. Just he really appreciates all the folks in the Whitefish area and the appreciation for Stoltz Lands and the help that you guys give us in managing our properties. I'll be moving into Chuck's position as the general manager, and then Cameron will be taking over as the resource manager for Stoltz Land Lumber. And then we have a forester that'll be moving into Cameron's position. So it'll be kind of a year of transition. We'll try to make sure we get everyone out and get introductions made so that folks know who to talk to when things come up. So with that, I guess if you guys have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
Make sure to give our best to Chuck. I'll give him a ring here. I wasn't aware that he was retiring, but congrats to you, Paul and Cameron, for your rise up in the company. You're going to do a great job.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, are there any other questions or issues that we need to discuss with regard to Haskill Basin, or anybody from the public that's listening in that has questions for us?
Alan, this is Dave Grady. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi,
Okay.
Dave.
Hi, Linda and I are joining in. We're actually down in West Yellowstone right now, but appreciate the opportunity to weigh in. We want to applaud our neighbors, Stoltz. We've lived across from the 800 road for many, many years. I've recreated back there since 1980, so 40 years of fun in Haskill Basin, as well as seeing it managed very well by Stoltz and now the city and FWP. So we're very appreciative of all of the work that's gone into that area, and it just makes living there that much better for us. As Paul mentioned, we do have concerns about the 800 access point. Cameron and Paul and Linda and I and John have been in conversation off and on for the over the summer and such, and we would definitely like to see more control over on that 800 road and less camping. It did get somewhat out of control this year. We also noticed that it tends to be what we think is a potential drug drop or transfer. We've seen different cars going there at different times of the late evenings and such, and pulling out very quickly, one after another. So that's a law enforcement issue, but those sorts of things do go on, and we have a special vantage point because we can see right through there into where people park. That said, I think part of the issue is that while it's designated as a parking area and trailhead on the map, on the WLP maps, it really hasn't been managed as such. And we would agree that that area should be managed much as the other WLP trailheads are managed, with the no overnight camping, and possibly even some infrastructure for to help remediate some of the issues that do go on, including the animal feces and human feces that we've seen over there as well. So yeah, and then the potential for fires. Obviously, where we live, and Stoltz has done a great job with the thinning and remediation over there. But where we live is a potential, urban wildland interface problem for fires, and we don't want to see, some rogue campers or rogue users get out of control with their campfires and such. And so we're not experts in that area by any means, but we would appreciate some dialogue to that end as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
So Dave, this is Paul. I appreciate you calling in and participating tonight, and I appreciate you reaching out and let us know your concerns there. One of the things we're looking at, as Cameron mentioned, we're looking at reviewing some of our open lands policies in the context of entering into a biannual rule with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And the things that are of concern is, looking at our fire use policies and obviously the camping issue. A lot of it's just education and people being responsible too. We've always had the problem with the dog poop. I don't know what to do about that. It seems like poop right next to the lock too. So when you go down to open the gate, you get to deal with it. Hopefully the restriction on the camping will help minimize the human feces problem. And then of course, as always, if you see something illegal going on, we encourage you to call the sheriff's department. That's the first response if you can. And then, share that information with us as well, but please call the law enforcement folks first, because there's not much we can do about it. And sometimes if they know quicker is better, and then we'll do what we can to try to mitigate from there. So appreciate your input. Ask for your patience as we deal with the growth pains of dealing with increased public use, and we're going to look to all of our partners to help us mitigate the impacts of that. Dave.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for that. And to that end, I would suggest too, if there's anything we can do as neighbors or as a neighborhood to educate, because as we all know, there's been quite a bit of migration into our area lately, and that includes the Reservoir Northwoods properties as well. And through the local homeowners associations, et cetera, if we can do some education for the residents as to responsible use of the Haskill Basin resources and trailheads, please let us know, and we can organize on that end and set up, potentially set up some discussions or some presentations from FWP, Stoltz, and the city. I think that would be, that's a great suggestion on your part, and we would be happy to participate.
I did also want.
Sorry, Marigosa.
Oh, that's fine. I did also want to mention when we were notified by Stoltz and the city brought into that conversation around overnight camping in those areas. While it's not part of the Whitefish Trail, we did contact some of our volunteer trail patrol who we know use dispersed recreation in Haskill Basin as well, and just kind of let them know that it was an issue and ask them to help with education with the public if they see folks camping there, having fires, and then also in instances where it needs to be reported, letting them know that there was a shift in with those areas being signed as no overnight camping. So we're hoping that they can help along with the signage and neighbors, just kind of with that general education and outreach, and passing it on to law enforcement when necessary.
I have a quick follow-up, if I may, Paul. And I don't know if this is a question for Margosha, you, Paul, or Angie, but this concept of having the 800 road, we'll just defer to that as the name, marked on trailhead maps, was that contemplated when we closed on the easement. Is it discussed in the multi-resource management plan? I doubt that, but should it be noted on our trail maps? And was it ever contemplated to be an actual parking area and quote trailhead?
So I can answer to how it's shown on maps, both at the trailheads and our paper Whitefish Trail map. So it's shown differently than Whitefish Trail trailheads. Essentially, there's a smaller parking symbol. And there's one also on the access from Haskill Basin Road that Glacier Nordic Club is using. So those are the two areas where we showed parking. We showed a no parking sign at the Iron Horse access as well. And the thinking behind that, the only thing within Haskill Basin itself, the more major roads are shown. And so we felt like it was important to kind of show the connectivity from the Whitefish Trail to those roads that are groomed and also used with dispersed recreation. But it's definitely shown as a secondary access. And, you know, our thinking with that was that it's reflecting how it's already being used by the public and helping people in kind of navigating how they're accessing Haskill Basin and knowing where they are, which is, you know, the main purpose of the map. So definitely shown differently than the Whitefish Trail. I can't really speak to with the easement how that was contemplated.
Yeah, I don't think that the easement would have shown that, John. And I honestly don't remember in the multi-use management plan, but I doubt very highly that that refers to it as well.
So I can speak that to a little. I think it might show up in the MRMP as a public access point. There's two that were identified, and those are the places that were their county roads that led to Stoltz property. That was a clear point of public access. Similarly, on the block management map, they're identified as public access points, with the thought being that we wanted to steer people to where the legal public access was rather than having them trying to seek out what they thought might be public access. And so there was some thought and some discussion with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and including, you know, identifying those points as the public access points. Now, you know, the parking area thing, you know, certainly off of the Haskill Basin Road, you know, we have a more developed parking area there. I think over time, we could discuss something similar at the 800 road, although the topography is a little more challenging up there, a little few more resource concerns. And of course, the more parking you put in, the more use you're going to attract too. So it's a balancing act between the goal of maintaining the status quo, historical use, and accommodating the types of use as well. I think similar to what we did on the Haskill Basin Road, we might need to consider some signage that says if the parking that's available is full, you need to go somewhere else, you know, essentially self-limit the use by the amount of parking capacity that's there. And certainly if we heard reports of people trying to park on the county road, on the reservoir road, that would necessitate some signage and what have you to cut back on that.
Yeah, you make a good point, Paul. The reason I bring that up is because when we worked on the easement and we received public comment, and obviously Stoltz was very engaged with the public process, we always contemplated that the east side of the easement would remain status quo, dispersed historical type recreational use, and that we'd have managed recreation on the Whitefish Trail, you know, at the developed trailhead. So I just think it's something we need to keep on our radar. I'm certainly not advocating that that becomes a designated trailhead or a developed trailhead with infrastructure. I don't think that was in the spirit of the easement. And I just think with city, WLP, and Stoltz need to continue monitoring, you know, that use and take appropriate, you know, measures to manage it as it was contemplated, which was for dispersed status quo use, because I think that was important to the public and the neighbors that also commented in the neighborhood.
Okay, good conversation. Anything else?
I just might say, as far as upcoming projects, we have been contacted by Northwest Energy for some additional gas line upgrades potentially. The city is probably aware that Northwest Energy has been trying to augment their gas supply to that part of their service area, and they've been exploring different easement routes in different locations. But ultimately, what I've most recently heard is that they're probably going to have to expand the size of the main and the existing easement that exists coming up. Oh, the main Haskill Basin Road, I guess you would call it, and up through the middle, and the existing location that goes up to WSI. So last I heard is they'd be looking at maybe upgrading that next summer. It would have less impact on the Whitefish Trail than this year's activities did, as it's on the main access route that goes up to WSI. I haven't heard confirmation of what they're going to do there. It would be within the existing easement they already hold. And I'm not sure if they would replace the line that's in there or just add an additional line in the same easement corridor or not. So as we hear more information, we'll pass that information on to the city and any of our partners, just so you can kind of know what's going on there.
Okay, thanks, Paul. If there's nothing else, we'll wrap up the Haskill Basin portion of this meeting and move on to Trumbull Creek. So if folks from Whitefish are welcome to stick around, but recognize you don't need to if you don't want to. It'll just be the same thing on another easement.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, John, and everyone in the city of Whitefish and the trails. It's been a lot of fun and a real pleasure working with you. You guys have done some amazing stuff up there, and Stoltz is absolutely the best to work with. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. You want to just move on forward with the Trumbull Creek right now, or do you want to take a little break? Paul, Cameron, Kevin?
I'm fine.
I
I'm
think
fine
we're
to
okay to keep going if you want.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
Yep, good.
Up for it. All right, let's roll on then. I have to get I have two computers open, so I have to keep track of which one's which. Okay, for Trumbull, we didn't have any to-do items from last year. So that's good news. We're all caught up. So Kevin, you want to start with the monitoring report for Trumbull? You're on mute, Kevin.
So we visited Trumbull Creek also on the same day, July 1st of this year. And Paul and I visited the property using via vehicle and foot. We toured a number of areas, including some harvest areas, some management areas, looked at some road maintenance, and very similar to Haskill Basin, just there's really not much more to report other than a much more increased use with regards to the pandemic. We received also a similar notice for a closure of the Four Corners area that I'm sure Cameron and Paul will talk more about. But other than that, everything looked good out there.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Cameron, you want to kick it off for Stoltz?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again. Can you see it?
Yep.
Here we go. So the Trumbull Creek Conservation Easement area is just over 7,000 acres. It's directly north of our mill site here, up Trumbull Canyon Road, about 2 3/4 miles. Is the main access point at Four Corners. And you can see the red line there represents our property line, and all our holdings are in the yellow color. So in Trumbull in 2020, we had approximately 186 acres of timber harvest, and they occurred across sections 14, 23, 24, and 35. If you got the maps I sent you, they all represent the work we did up there this year. Didn't have any significant blowdown up in Trumbull. It was mainly tree health, forest health issues that was why we targeted those areas for logging. Fir engraver and the grand fir, mistletoe and the larch, fading Doug fir, and just areas that haven't been managed in about 100 years and really needed some sunlight and thinning to keep going and be healthy. So adjacent to the Trumbull Creek Conservation Area was more units on the Whitefish Municipal Stewardship timber sale. And we completed all the logging and the slash work, which is post-harvest, falling of damaged residuals, excavator piling. And there are a few piles to finish up and grind for hog fuel for our cogen next fall. Road management. We did some post-haul blading just for to maintain our best management practices, our BMPs on those roads for drainage. Four Corners was open for the summer, July through October. Super heavy use up there due to Glacier Park being closed and people just being outdoors. We had weed spraying on approximately 84 acres in Trumbull, a lot this year. So that's equates to about 35 miles of road. For the Whitefish Municipal Stewardship timber sale, we constructed 3 temporary spur roads off of our upper holding on the west side. And those were to cross the forest into the Forest Service boundary and facilitate the removal of that timber. Those roads were all obliterated and recontoured and grass seeded this fall. So they've all been reclaimed up to the Forest Service line. We kept the roads on our property for future management. One cool fact about those roads was not only were we harvesting Forest Service timber, one of the timber sales, we actually pulled up through Forest Service property, which is pretty neat and special. It doesn't always happen, and got an area that really needed management because there's just no other way due to the lay of the land and lack of access for us to get it any other way. So they were gracious enough to let us skyline it up through one of their harvest units. That would be Haskill Section 9 skyline, I believe, if you have the maps in front of you. There was no excavation in the conservation easement area this year. Our 4-mile pit up on Trumbull Canyon is excluded from the CE, but we did take about 10,000 yards of gravel out of that pit for our log yard. We planted 23,000 seedlings up there this spring on 89 acres. That's about 261 trees an acre. We always touch up our boundary lines. People move up against them and more subdivision. These larger properties are broken up, and we try to revisit all our property lines within 5 years to freshen them up with paint or ribbon. And it's amazing what you'll find people building onto your property, putting partial gates on your property or thinning out your property so for whatever reasons. It's just pretty interesting. So we found how important it is to reestablish our boundary lines and see what's going on. And it's also a good way to meet your neighbors, we found. So there's a road users group that kind of maintains a road fund for maintenance, and it's not doing very well. The group's having real leadership issues and is falling apart. Federal changes and reforms to banking has also caused them from being able to operate a business account for their collection. So essentially they're looking into forming an HOA to have a business banking account. But it's a catch-22 up there. People like the road in rough condition because it makes traffic slower. Other people don't like beating their cars up and want the road fixed. So, and then you have no formal way of collecting money either. So it's basically those folks looking for their neighbors to contribute, you'd say, for their snow plowing fund. Stoltz blades their road every spring, or our road, I should say, for our maintenance and our use. And if we log up there or manage our timber, you know, we may do a second blading every year on that road and snow plow it. But without us working up there commercially, they have some real trouble in maintaining their road system. So anyways, they're looking to form the HOA to hopefully get them on the right track and for the future. And they're also talking about putting up a road fund collection for recreational use. So it'll be essentially a donation. And I'm not sure how that's really working out for them. You know, there's some reports of shooting going on in the residential areas of that road, Trumbull Canyon Road. And last year we posted some signage up right at the expo site there on the grandstands for no shooting, trash dumping, burning, narrow road, heavy traffic. Like I said, recreational use was pretty crazy up there. Usually you don't see 10 rigs up there except when the snow starts flying, and it was nonstop up there all summer long. I wish I had the picture, but we had a boat dumped up at Four Corners in the winter. I went up there one day and there was just an old boat laying in the middle of the road. It's just some crazy stuff happens. You never know what you're going to see. Winter recreation's still causing issues with bringing long trailers up there and the parking lot being full, and then people having to back down the road to turn around and get out of there. And that's an ongoing issue that probably won't be resolved this year. The Ravenwood Educational Site's still in operations. They operated this year, so that was good. I heard they had a successful year. Family Forestry Expo was canceled due to COVID. Block management, nothing crazy new and exciting. We're looking at maybe closing a segment of road to walk-in only next year. Just a few issues regarding traffic, hunting traffic, driving on roads that were closed with signs in the dark with their lights off and log trucks coming down through. And I put signs up that closed it Monday through Friday, 7 to 5, but they just, didn't think the signs applied to them, and it created a pretty bad safety hazard for our trucks and other people up in there. So we're looking into that for next year, but otherwise it was pretty quiet up in Trumbull this year in terms of hunting incidents. So that was good. And that segment I'm talking about, if you're familiar at all with our Trumbull easement up there, is between the private Finch property on the main Haskill Basin Road coming off Edgewood there. and the Rusty Spur Gate, which it's roughly the 3/4 miles, the Finch property gate. And then Rusty Spurs at about the 2 mile. So that little segment in there. DNRC posted educational fire signs at 4 corners, and they survived the season and they seemed to work. We were really nervous. There's a month period of super dry conditions up there, and we just posted as many signs as we could around at our access points to help educate campers and just recreationalists, because we had a lot of new people. They're getting pushed out of, they didn't have Glacier Park to go to this year, and they found spots on our property, and we were pretty concerned, but thankfully we didn't have any incidents there. We're also looking at the biannual rule discussion to facilitate our open lands policy enforcement with Trumbull as well, just for those few issues we've had and up there. I had some concrete barriers placed at the on the main Trumbull Canyon Road, at our big green gate at the 2 3/4 mile on either end. So one at the 2 3/4 and one at the top end of Trumbull Canyon Road, where our property line is. I guess it would be roughly the 6 mile. And we were having a real issue with large Jeeps and small trucks going around our gates on trails that just kept getting wider every year. So I got some Jersey barriers and actually buried them in the ground because people kept moving our rocks and stumps, root wads, everything we put in the way to try to restrict the size vehicle to access up through there. They would just move. And then obviously we'd have road damage from larger vehicles driving on our roads when they're wet and soft. And, it's just more cost efficient to put something in that's not going to be moved instead of having to fix our roads every year. So we'll see how this works out. Like I said, these UTVs are getting heavier and bigger. We have pictures of some that are just about as big as Jeeps. And so it's somewhat concerning because we're having a lot of damage on other properties, not just seeing them up on the conservation easement area for off-road use and undesignated use. This slide's kind of a repeat from the Haskill Basin presentation. We also have these signs up that show our open lands policy to try to educate users on the Trumbull block. Here's a sign, the no shooting sign I got posted at the 3/4 mile on Trumbull Canyon. So none of the CE parcels were included in the tree farm audit for 2020. It was a standard surveillance audit. No opportunities for improvement or compliance issues were noted by our inspector. The NRC BMP audits got bumped back to 2022. This year was supposed to be an audit year, but due to COVID, they decided just to bump it back to the next cycle. We had a 310 permit inspection on our annual South Fork of Trumbull Creek diversion permit, and we passed. For those of you who don't know, we divert the South Fork of Trumbull Creek every year around July, and because the main Trumbull Creek fades out and we need that water down at our mill. And then we take the diversion out in October. And anyways, that got inspected by the Conservation District and passed. We had an SFI audit, Sustainable Forestry Initiative, in October. It's just a surveillance audit. We did not have any sites on Trumbull this year. We had 2 days of site visits, and we had no non-conformance or opportunities for improvement there either, which is great. And the auditor recommended us for continued certification to SFI. Questions? Comments?
You left them speechless, Cameron.
That's good.
Yeah, you know, the same thing. Just managing the public use is going to continue to be a challenge on these properties, and I don't know if there's any one solution to any of it. So, but we do appreciate, your wardens have been great. Very cooperative. It's interesting on that boat issue. We kind of called in a little bit of social media on that one, posted it, and miraculously the boat disappeared. Unfortunately, it showed up again in my neighborhood about two houses down from mine. So we know who dropped it off the first time, but they picked it back up and drug it and dumped it on their own property this time. So yeah.
Paul, maybe you should expand your business. You had a trailer before, now you got a boat. Used boat and RV sale.
Yeah, it's a possibility. The one thing I forgot to mention at our last meeting that it'll affect both Trumbull and Haskill is that the tree farm system is updating their standards for sustainability. They do that every 5 to 10 years, and so when they do that, it causes us to have to revisit our forest management plan and sometimes make some minor tweaks to that to address changes in the standard or what have you. So as we go through that, I don't think they're going to release the new standard. Cameron, correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're going to release it in 2021, and then they expect to implement it in 2022. So we have a little time to get things updated. Same thing with SFI. Just what they do, they update it's kind of a continual improvement program for both those certification bodies, and there's always something that changes. So we have to update our management plans to comply. So looking to share that with you. Just kind of wondering, Alan, who's going to be our...
quick question on that? Not to interrupt. I'm sorry. Before the thought leaves my mind, would that require us amending our MRMP with the city or not?
Possibly, John.
Okay.
We'll see if there's any substantial changes necessary. I don't know. Cameron, I don't know if you've seen any of the drafts. Generally, it's just reorganization in the words. It doesn't really change the way we do things on the ground, John.
Sure.
There's a possibility we might have to update that.
Okay.
Well, as always, I just really appreciate you guys' stewardship. Really good reports, Cameron, Paul. I'll be interested to check out those Jersey berries, check in with you guys next year and see if those are still holding up. Hopefully that works.
Yeah. So Alan, the question I have is if you retire, who do we, is Kris going to be our primary point of contact in the short term, or do you have you know what's going on there yet?
I don't know what's going on. Kevin would be your best contact in terms of easement monitoring stuff. I assume they'll be filling my position, but that's a big unknown with a new governor and the legislature coming up and what might come of all of that. Neil hasn't made any steps yet to do that. So he is planning on it as long as they let him do it. So probably Neil or the enforcement folks locally and Kevin, if it's specifically related to the conservation easement. And then
Alan, this is Kris.
Yeah.
This is Kris Tempel. I just wanted to let Paul know that obviously I'm very familiar with the conservation easements and the management plans. And if we have to update it or do something in the interim, if we don't have a new Alan yet, you can always contact me as well, for sure.
Thanks, Kris. I figured I'd count on you.
Yep, just reach out to me and I can always push it off to Kevin or whoever needs to do it too. So if you just need a local point of contact, I'm happy to do that.
Sounds good. Well, just keep us in the loop, please.
Yeah, and management plan updates are relatively easy. We've done a couple of those before, and you just throw out what you want to do, let us know, and we'll provide you some feedback.
What I could see happening is that our standard, we have the specific MRMPs for each easement, and they reference our tree farm management plan. I can see our tree farm management plan having to be updated, reorganized, but I don't see the content of the specific elements of the MRMP for the easements having to change. So,
Okay. Shouldn't be a big deal.
Dylan woke back up.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, lo and behold, Paul, if you ever need to get in touch with anybody, give me a call,
Okay,
and I can try to find somebody for you.
appreciate that. Thanks again on help on the communication side, getting the word out. We had that bear incident. It wasn't on the CE, but communication is really important in those situations. We appreciate your assistance there, Dylan.
Yeah, happy to help. And along the lines of kind of what we've been talking about here today is we're really recognizing the need for this whole kind of recreate responsibly communication plan that everybody's kind of touched on. And I've been meeting with the Forest Service and the Park Service and Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes because they're all seeing it. And we're trying to kind of pool our resources together to kind of almost start from scratch with a lot of our communications, pack it in, pack it out, leave no trace. Some of these things that are kind of bedrock communications for Montanans, and like we've all described with new folks moving here, or visitors that aren't aware of that, we're kind of hoping to really unveil a big communication effort around these because it's certainly reared its head this year in a bad way.
Well, there's an opportunity for us to participate in that conversation, Dylan. Let Cameron or I know so we can be there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully things will return back to normal next year, or this year, I guess, next year, 2021. And then everybody can just go up to the park and it'll just be back to normal. Fingers crossed.
Wishful thinking, Alan.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Dylan, just a shout out.
So-
Thanks for me get the meeting on. You were super responsive and easy to work with. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, not only our communication guy, but he's our tech guy too. Dylan pretty much does it all.
That's what that job description is, isn't it?
Yeah. Wait till I start bugging
Yeah,
about
they
other
didn't-
education classes, Paul.
I knew it's coming.
Yeah.
They didn't quite tell him the whole job description when they hired him, but he's figured it out over the years.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look like there's anybody left from the public on this one. So I guess that wraps it up, folks. Till next year when you can all get back together in person.
Maybe.
Make it easier.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
Better. Come on, Paul. Things are going to get back to normal next year. Let's
Okay,
just count on that. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, thank you all for all you do. It's been a pleasure working with you. And
Yeah.
Thanks,
maybe.
Alan.
Alan, you and Chuck can find some time to go fishing together or something.
yeah, I've got a lot of catching up to do on that end.
Yeah, sounds good. Congratulations.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
And just so everybody knows, I did take notes. So I will be preparing the notes since Chris Hammond wasn't able to attend. So anyway, I do have those and I will eventually get those out to people and let you review to see if I missed anything or mischaracterized stuff. So definitely not usually in my job description, but I'm happy to have been here and taking notes, and thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank
Chris.
you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
See you, everybody.
See you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.